Welcome to the Brandwise podcast, where we talk about the big branding moves that business owners are making and the why behind it. I'm your host, Jess Freeman, here to help you be wise and be bold. Today, I am chatting with Melanie Benson, Authority Amplifier for expert-preneurs since 2000 and founder of the Authority Accelerator. Melanie shows you how to amplify the reach of your lighthouse message by borrowing other people's podcasts to reach 5- and 6-figure months. I loved how Melanie mentioned the energy she felt behind her brand, and I'd encourage you to also take some time to think about what energy you are feeling or not feeling behind your own brand. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Melanie. Thank you so much for being here, Melanie. I am really excited to chat today. So to get us started, what is your brand all about?
My business is about helping people who feel like an invisible expert or a best kept secret really learn this secret sauce to standing out authentically. So my brand really brings that to life. It's about this authentic connection. It's about the power of being seen as what I call a ripple maker, because I really specialize in people who want to make a greater impact in the world. And it's about like what happens when there's consistency and visibility. So I feel like we've worked very hard to bring this kind of like next level energy around the brand, but also like keeping it relatable, connection oriented, and authentic.
I feel like our brands are very similar because I talk a lot about how you are an expert, but your website is not positioning you and you're like underselling yourself. So I feel like we
Yeah.
have a lot of that in common. Now, obviously, we're talking about your rebrand. So I would love for you to start with telling us about like the old brand and then what made you decide to rebrand your business?
Yeah. So I've been through several rebrands because I started my business in 2000. I'll talk about the last really significant rebrand. And part of it was I I feel like as an entrepreneur and as an impact-driven entrepreneur, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly evolving.
Mhm.
And the last really big rebrand, I feel like there was this out of sync representation of my everything from my messaging to the colors that were being used to the way my brand was kind of on my website. It didn't have that level of professionalism and classiness that I like to bring forward. But even the colors we were using were screaming like homegrown, right? That's what, the feedback was. And, I think what happened was I was really seeing the kind of clients I wanted to work with had a little more sophistication. They were a little more advanced in their business trajectory. And little things like the experience they had when they would see my social images or the experience they had when they saw the visual of my website made a huge impact in the experience they preconceived about me. So this was, I don't know, maybe like 8 years ago, we started kind of re-upping my brand, and it took about a couple years to really find my groove. Now, if I'd worked with somebody more like you, I might have been able to do it a little faster. But, what we did was we went from kind of like this teal and yellowish color, which really I don't even like yellow. I don't know even know how we landed on that, to what felt very rich and this I think it's like a plum color with these flecks of gold. And instantly, when we did the first touch of rebranding with the color scheme and the fonts and the way in which the kind of the professionalism or the experience of the imagery, people were like, "Ooh, snap.
Mhm.
I like it." So we actually started with rebranding the colors, and we tested a message that still wasn't quite right, and then did a little more messaging testing and then landed on something with this lighthouse messaging that really landed.
Nice.
And I call it the ooh factor. Like I kept people kept going, "Ooh, that's really resonating for me. Ooh, like that's really speaking to me." And that's what I'm looking for when I help people design messaging. And I think that's what you're looking for when you help people create the
Mhm.
visual brand
Yeah.
image as well.
I love that. I love that you did some testing because as you and I both know, not everything is concrete. And I feel like a lot of people are like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to create. These are the colors. This is the message, the tagline, and like, boom, it's done. But really, like that
Yeah.
testing piece is important. Did you so you rolled out the color and then just kept tweaking the messaging after that?
Yes, and to be completely transparent, like, we need to get new pictures too, like, I haven't done a photo shoot in a while, and it's like, that's the next piece, and I feel like let's go back to this testing thing for a moment, because I think what happens is people think, "Oh my god, something's in
Hmm.
stone," and maybe it's a little bit of the scarcity energy, or it's the, I'm afraid of getting it wrong that goes into visibility and branding. I believe that everything always is a test.
Hmm.
And when we invest in the way we're being experienced by our audience, our community, by the people that we serve, yes, we wanna have this consistency. We don't wanna be like every week we're trying something new and people are like, "Who are you and what are you really about?" But it's okay to kind of refine little pieces of it till you get that ooh factor and you really get that energetic congruence between the feedback you're getting from your market and who you truly know yourself to be and the energy that you want to be experiencing, whatever that is for you. For me, it's a sense of it's like that click. It's like you just land into this click of like, yes, it's all at this high level of functionality. Like everything is flowing.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether you start with the messaging or you start with the visual representation of your colors, but eventually you need to get both of them feeling very congruent and being consistent across all of your platforms.
Hmm.
Yeah, and 'cause once we locked that in, then I started going across every social platform and making sure that was congruent, that was, having the visuals well as the messaging consistency so that somebody doesn't go to LinkedIn and have one experience of me, go to Threads or Instagram and have another experience of me, and they go to my website and go, "Wait, what is going on
Hmm.
here?" Because that creates a little seed of doubt in the buyer's mind.
It has to be consistent, especially as online as we are nowadays, and as a designer, it drives me nuts to see the inconsistencies in branding and just like your website looks like this, but then your Instagram looks like this, and you're using totally different colors and fonts, and I'm like, this is a totally different vibe that you're putting out. And I'm actually just finished working with someone recently who has a very luxurious vibe. She's very high end. Her brand photos show that, but then the messaging showed that, but then like her fonts and colors and even her logo were not. And it was
Mm.
just very, very small tweaks that we made. Really, it was just the fonts, even that really changed that. So then everything felt cohesive. And I was like, just this little change, I feel like it's going to make a big, big improvement in that consistency and really make everything actually fit. Now, how did you decide what to keep versus like what to let go of during the rebrand? Or did you let go of everything?
Well, the way I experience the branding process, it starts with the client, then it goes to the offer, and then it goes to the visual representation and the messaging that goes with it, right? So what started was shifting who my client was.
Mm,
And I wouldn't say we threw out my old client base, but what we did do is get crystal clear who we did want to be working with more and more, which, a word we could potentially use is high value clients. They're people who are a little more advanced in their career path and they still feel like a best kept secret.
mm,
They still feel invisible, even though they've been in business, they're really good at what they do. Then the second layer was if this is who I really want to attract, what is the programs that are designed? So we tweaked my programs. And this is where a lot of shift happened. We really recalibrated the container. I went away from more, like, on-demand programs and what might be considered, what's the word? Not pedantic. Well, anyway, it's like a very general kind of group coaching type experience, and we went to these super high touch, very, much focused on integrate as you go, done with you programs, because my clients don't wanna sit in a room and learn.
Mm, mhm.
Then we're like, "Okay, if this is who we wanna attract," then we went to what is the color scheme? What is the energy of a color? What does that color even say to that potentially client? And we went for this rich, very luxurious, you used that word earlier, um, color scheme that really A, aligned with me and B, represented that. Because honestly, like we were using different colors here and there. And it's like this image or that program had different colors. And it was like, this is all like too many different things. And we released all the old colors
Nice.
outside of black font,
Right, yeah.
like nothing else existed. And we changed fonts, we changed colors, we changed the, energy, we went to very more intentional, image, type of images that we
Mhm.
used, and then, the messaging got a huge facelift, and that was the last kind of puzzle piece to click in. And that's because we were, as I said, we were testing and trying different things, but yeah, if you knew my brand even 5 years ago and you know the brand now, you'll see a little bit of thread because 'cause I've always talked about authenticity, I've always talked about mindset, but the positioning of what I do is dramatically more specific and very focused on, like, this idea of overcoming this being a secret in your industry.
So, there were a lot of pieces, and this is one of the reasons I have this podcast is just to show that the rebranding process can look different to everyone. Some people include the messaging, some have that nailed down and just shift the visuals, and there's lots of pieces that can go into it, and yours was a little bit of everything, which I love. So, what were some of the unexpected, like, challenges, or did you have any, like, "Oh, crap," kind of moments during this process?
Well, here's who I am. When something is working, I hang on to it for dear life
Mm,
because I don't really like going through all these changes. The if I can be completely transparent, well, why not? I mean, we're being completely transparent. Like the thing that's the hardest for me is letting go of something and trying to find the new thing. And the person you become in doing that is so much more powerful. It's like when we're holding on to this old energy of ourselves, it's not like there isn't that powerful, like magnetic, like irresistible quality when we're hanging on for dear life to
mhm.
something that's kind of not really in sync anymore. I mean, and part of it is the industry around us shifts. So we have to keep finding that bridge between the world our clients live in and who we are and what we offer and what's really lighting our fire. So that is a very hard process for me, even though this is what I do with my clients all day long.
As someone who rebranded last year, I definitely felt an energy shift, and it was funny because I wasn't really feeling like I needed that shift. Like, the rebrand kind of came up very unexpectedly, and mine was more visuals and some colors, but I didn't really, like, change my logo or and that kinda thing, but just making that shift and then also niching down, like, really revitalized me and my brand and my business, and it was like, not something that I was expecting or looking for, and I find that in all these conversations on the podcast, people keep saying after I rebranded, like, I had more confidence, I was more energetic, I was more excited to market myself and my offers, and I think that is something that people don't think about when they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I need to rebrand." It's usually comes from, "Oh, I just my logo's really outdated." Like, "My website needs an overhaul." Like, they're not thinking about how they feel energetically with their brand, and so hopefully this gets people thinking about that about that.
There was a part 2 to this too. The other thing that I think, and I don't think this will happen to everybody, but what I personally experienced was because I was kind of turning the ship a bit, and the ship's pretty big, it's been around a long time, and the people get to know me in a certain way, and you're pivoting the ship and you're pointing in a new direction, it took a little bit to catch everybody up.
Mm.
It's like, okay, that version of the work we're doing is kind of not where we're going next. And so people are like, but don't you do this? And I'm like, yes, and. And
Mhm.
part of the, I should even, now that I'm thinking about it, I should go back to part of the reason why I did go into this rebrand was because the competition of what I had been doing before was so great that, it was really easy to like have to go in as a commodity and compete on price or really focus on the size of a list, right? So I was like, I don't want to be competing. I want to be creating and solving problems that the other people are creating. So it was like shifting that. So yeah, that was the other thing is it took a little bit to get the audience to recalibrate where we were going
Mhm.
and to really look at like what have we said yes to that maybe keeps attracting the audience that's no longer a fit for where we're going.
I'm curious if, and that you may not remember, but I know you've been in business for a long time. You said you've gone through rebrands a few times. I'm curious when you've done it before, did you ever like completely wipe your email list or
Mhm.
anything like that? Or like delete all the old blog posts, or because that's something that comes up a lot with my clients when they're rebranding. They're like, I think I'm just gonna like scratch my whole email list. I'm going to delete. Like I just worked with a client who had, I mean, like hundreds of blog posts. And she just was like, I don't want any of them. And I was like,
Mm.
okay. So I'm just curious from my own curiosity at how you handle that kind of stuff.
Well, that's a great question because when we did this last big shift and we redid my website, um, I had hundreds of blog posts that we imported, but I didn't repost all of them
Mm. Mhm.
because they weren't really relevant anymore. The quality of the conversation wasn't really gonna carry over to where we were going, and it was I was like, I don't really wanna be attracting people when that's the thing they're focused on.
Right.
I mean, I dramatically changed what I focus on between, 2001 and
Right. Yeah.
2012, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's not even the same offer. So, I didn't really want that to be what they would count on or want from me. So yes. Now where we didn't scrap things is we didn't scrap my old podcast episodes. It's like we're going into our 7th year as this is airing. And I was like, yeah, there's five, we're at 500 episodes. The first 300 probably aren't as relevant as the second 200 and going forward, but nobody's going back that far.
Right.
Um, and we didn't scrap my email list. However, if you want a good way to clean your list quickly, change the direction of your business and then change your CRM,
Mm.
right? Because
Mhm.
now you've got to bring those people over to your new CRM. And if they're not really engaging with what you're talking about and you do good list hygiene and you clean your list regularly, they're not staying anyway.
Right.
So
Mhm.
you keep the people who do have some relevant, desire for where you're going, but you don't have to just kick them to the curb. They do that for themselves.
Yeah, I did, when I niched down a few months ago, I sent out a few emails to my list to kinda be like, "This is the shift I'm making, I'm niching down, click if you wanna stay," and I deleted, like, 70% of my list, which
Scary, isn't
which
it?
was very
Sounds
scary.
terrifying.
Yes, but as they say, like, if they're not clicking, if they're not opening, like, they were never gonna buy in the first place. So,
Yeah.
why pay for them anyway? It's still scary, but my open rate, I already had a good open rate and now it's gotten even better. So, small wins.
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the process and whatnot. I'm curious, what part of your rebrand are you most proud of and why?
Well, I'd have to go first with the messaging.
Mhm.
The way I call it a lighthouse message is is it's really finding this unique quality to and that's catchy in your marketplace. And landing on this for myself was really exciting because again, I'm always testing things. And there's a couple things that played into this. First of all, I was running with some messaging that was very catchy, but also had some embedded problems because it was a big promise. And, this is getting into some technical stuff, but some of the recent changes with the FTC in the United States, that was going to be some potential problem area. And there were a lot of people who really need what I do that were like, I don't know, that's so big and so flashy. And it's like they weren't resonating the way I would want them to. So it was attracting some great momentum around the visibility side, but it wasn't necessarily working as well for conversion. So we made a shift from focusing on what I call $1,000,000 visibility, which is what happens through the visibility process when you're borrowing really aligned audiences and then really looking at collaboration and like the kind of the ripple effect that happens from that. And then I steered into, well, what is actually the thing that's missing for so many of my angel clients, which is this lighthouse message. And all of a sudden, people were coming out of the woodwork going, oh my God, you're speaking to me. I don't have this lighthouse message. How do I get this lighthouse message? This feels so exciting. And I was like, isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
So that for me, because A, it's indicative of the work I do, but B, I was like, oh, this is this is so much fun. That was really good. And then, of course, really landing on a color scheme that just feels so intrinsically captivating to me
Mhm.
and to my ideal clients. I liked that as well.
Yeah, it is interesting how I feel like some people maybe overthink their colors and some people underthink their colors, but it's always interesting to me when I'm working with clients and if I even if I'm not doing their branding, I kind of like how colors, like how are you feeling? Do you have a dominant color that you want to use? Some people want everything evenly, some want like no, really focus on this one. And some people are like, "I mean, it's meh." And I'm like, "This is like, you may not even consciously recognize that how you feel so about your colors is affecting how you don't wanna make your graphics for social media, you don't wanna post on Instagram." You're like, "Oh, I don't wanna, like." That is part of playing into that, and so I love that you actually really love your colors. Like, it seems maybe to some like a trivial little thing, like it's just your colors, but it really does play into everything.
And I think what was unique for me at least, and I don't know if this is what you teach, but it wasn't just that I loved my colors. It was that there was this intersection between what I was told would be very appealing to my ideal
Mhm.
clients and really represented the work I do congruently. And also I clicked and went, oh, yes, that's gorgeous. That's what I want.
Mhm.
And having both of those things come together, because I used to pick colors based on just what made me feel good.
Right.
And I think that kinda took it to a whole new level for me.
Mhm. And I agree, because you mentioned, like, I don't know what you teach. I definitely there's a fine line between, like, what feels good to you and also what's gonna resonate with your audience, because obviously, I mean, this is a very, very stereotypical gender answer, but, like, if you are marketing only to men and you have a hot pink brand, it most likely is not going to resonate with a majority of that audience. So, like, it may feel good to you, but is it going to feel good to them, to a majority of them? And so it's a tricky line, but I feel like a lot of people find that good balance. So yeah, it's an important piece. Now, we want to get into the juicy stuff. So I want to hear about how the rebrand has impacted your business.
I think there's several things. One, you mentioned earlier, this confidence, and I think my confidence definitely I don't think, I know my confidence definitely went up exponentially, and just knowing that there was this, congruent, luxurious energy that was kind of rippling out through all of my different assets was very, exciting. It actually made content creation easier because now we had a brand guide. Okay, not like, "Oh, what should we do here?" We had a brand guide and
Yeah.
like, "This is what we do." So it was, it kinda minimized the back and forth and confusion at times to really like, "Okay, yeah, this is where this is our box that we play in."
Mhm.
And I will own that sometimes we experiment with some fonts just for different programs, but, that's me. Always the, experimenter. I would say that especially when the messaging kicked in, my program enrollments doubled.
Nice.
So that was actually very exciting to watch. And it also like what we test now is in a much smaller window.
Mm.
So there's less that didn't work and more, okay, that worked really well. How do we do more of that?
I mean, I know you mentioned the confidence piece. I'm curious if there's
Mhm.
anything else that you feel like you personally evolved during this process other than the confidence.
I think there's something when you're stepping into what you might kind of consider like this next evolution of yourself, and all of the components start to match this next level of what you've imagined for yourself. And it's almost like this buoy effect. Instead of feeling like you're constantly trying to keep up and there's so many things that you're figuring out. It's like this buoy kind of raises you up and there's a sense of effortlessness to it. And I'm not going to suggest there's not effort involved with what we do today, but so many of the pieces just work well together
Mm,
that we can now go, all right, well, instead of we got to test all these things, now we're going to host a live event, or now we're going to really focus on dialing in our whole masterclass practice so that it's all the systems are in place, right? I think it gave me confidence to focus on next level, bolder initiatives that would kind of move the needle around our brand and around my business in another way.
it's interesting to me the ways that something like branding in our business affects us personally. I think it's another
Mhm.
one of those things that people don't expect. Again, they're just like, "Oh, I need a new logo, I need a new website, I need to tweak my copy and my messaging," and they don't think about what happens internally, like what we were talking about earlier with the energy.
And, it's like, I think it's easy for us as business owners to get in the weeds.
Mm, mhm.
And when you're trying to figure all this stuff out and you're messing around with little things like colors and fonts and, what's the right thing that represents the energy and the quality of what I'm trying to put out in the world, it's going to drain you from doing what I consider real needle moving activity. It's going
Mhm.
to actually catapult your visibility. It's going to keep you consistent because most people are so in like the bottleneck of like, "Okay, well, I'm getting my Canva art together and I'm doing this," or, and
Mhm.
it's like, you actually need to be investing your time and energy in where can I partner up with somebody? Where can I be, presenting my message so that I'm using it as a beacon to attract ideal clients into my business? How can I be of greater service? Like, there's just a different vibration and a different, um type of return on effort, if you
Mhm.
will, when you're not in the weeds with all that stuff. And it's like, yep, that's set. Now I do the things that are bigger leaps.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. So, last question, what advice do you have for someone who is thinking about rebranding?
Do not attempt this on your own. I would not be where I am today if I had done this out of my own brain. I think we need to surround ourselves with experts that shorten the path and can do the heavy lifting. Like, you don't need to be redoing your website. It's like,
Amen.
y yeah, and it's like your level of expertise got you to where it is today, but if you wanna go into that next bold leap, chances are you do need to uplevel your messaging. You do need to uplevel the energetic, kind of experience that someone's getting when they
Mhm.
come to your site or come to your socials, and if you could have done it on your own, you probably would have already. Yeah. Get some help. Get somebody who has expertise in this that can pull the best out of you. Okay. You don't want somebody who smashes it on your head and goes, do this.
Mm-hmm.
You need somebody who can really extract it from you and then help you integrate it into your business quickly.
Yes, I love that. I think it's Rachel Rogers who says, like, what would the millionaire version of me do?
Mhm.
Um, I don't I don't know if that's her who says it or if it's something like that. The quote is that's kind of a paraphrase, but I think about that often. Like, obviously, I'm not advising anybody go into debt to be clear, but I think sometimes we really do need to get out of our own way and just admit, like, I need help. I can't do the best version of this. And whether that's branding, messaging, whatever else in business, I think sometimes we all get in our own way and think that it might be easier if we do it ourselves, when really that just usually makes it harder.
Yeah, it's like you take one step forward, but 10 steps backwards
Mhm.
because you're not focused on the things that you could be moving forward because you're trying to save some money doing the thing yourself. What do they call it? Stepping over dollars to pick up pennies.
Mhm.
And I think that's not really the best thing. You said, what would the millionaire version of me? Because I work with ripple makers, it's like, what would the ripple maker do differently here? If you're making big waves, are you doing that yourself?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I loved hearing about this process. But where can we connect with you and learn from you?
Yeah. So always available on melaniebenson.com, on all the socials, except for that one that should be named nameless, the one that no longer exists in my mind.
Mhm.
um, I also have something, if you're listening in and you're really like, you're kind of resonating with this idea of a lighthouse message, that's a part of what I call your ripple making machine. And that's how you make big waves and really move mountains and, stand out in your industry. And I've put together this quiz that will kind of help you self-identify. Am I ready to make big waves? Do I have the elements in place for my brand, my message, and my work to stand out and command attention? If you go to melaniebenson.com/brandwise, see what I
Nice.
did there?
Yes.
Then you'll be able to take the quiz. It's absolutely free. And then it'll also give you some ways to unpack those results and prioritize what are you going to do right now to get your brand and your message and your work to stand out.
I love it. Of course, I will make sure to link to that in the show notes so you guys can go check that out. But thank you again for being here. If today's branding story inspired you and you're ready to start your own rebrand adventure, head over to justcreatives.com/rebrand to explore how we can work together on your brand. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave a review or share it on Instagram and tune in next week for another episode.